It was 1940. War raged across Europe, and fear choked the continent. The Germans had swept through Poland, leaving a path of terror and destruction. Amidst the devastation, a young Polish aristocrat, Krystyna Skarbek, dared to confront the juggernaut of the Third Reich. This is the story of how one woman's courage and audacity would make her one of the most celebrated and effective spies of World War II. Krystyna Skarbek was born into a life of privilege and contradictions. Her father, Count Audacious Skarbek, came from one of Poland's oldest noble families, while her mother, Stefania Goldfeder, was the daughter of a wealthy Jewish banker. Growing up, Krystyna's life was filled with opulence, but it was not without shadows. Despite their wealth, her father's extravagant lifestyle meant that the family fortune soon dwindled. The young Krystyna, accustomed to luxury, found herself confronting the harsh realities of a changing world. Yet it wasn't just financial hardship that shaped her. As a girl of mixed heritage in early 20th century Poland, Krystyna felt the sting of anti-Semitism and discrimination. This sense of being an outsider fueled a fierce independence and a desire to prove herself. She grew up defiant, courageous, and determined to live life on her own terms. These traits would define her actions during the war, making her a formidable adversary to the Germans. In her early 20s, Krystyna tried to find stability through marriage. Her first attempt was to a businessman named Gustav Getlich, but the marriage soon fell apart. She then met Jerzy Gizicki, an adventurous diplomat who introduced her to the world of international politics. Their whirlwind romance led to a second marriage and a diplomatic posting in Ethiopia. But when war broke out in September 1939, everything changed. Krystyna and Jerzy fled Ethiopia and made their way to London. It was here that Krystyna decided to take a stand. With Poland under occupation and much of Europe falling under the Third Reich, she felt compelled to act. Unlike most refugees who sought safety, Krystyna wanted to go back, to fight. She approached the British Secret Intelligence Service MI6, offering her services as a spy. Initially, they were skeptical. What could a glamorous Polish countess offer the war effort? But Krystyna was no ordinary woman. Fluent in multiple languages, an expert skier, and possessing nerves of steel, she quickly convinced them to give her a chance. And thus, Christine Granville was born, a new identity that would become synonymous with bravery, deception, and heroism. Krystyna's first assignment took her to Hungary, a country teetering on the brink of joining the Axis powers. Arriving in Budapest in December 1939, she adopted the cover story of a journalist. But her true mission was far more dangerous. She had to establish an escape route for Polish soldiers and intelligence agents trapped in Nazi-occupied Poland. Working with her childhood friend, Polish Olympic skier Jan Marusars, she smuggled couriers and crucial intelligence through the snow-covered Tatra Mountains into Hungary. Crossing the Tatra Mountains in winter was perilous. The terrain was treacherous, the temperatures lethal, and the risk of being captured by German patrols was ever present. But Krystyna's intimate knowledge of the region, combined with her skill in skiing and mountaineering, allowed her to lead multiple successful missions. She smuggled reports, weapons, and even personnel into Poland, providing a critical lifeline to the Polish resistance. During one particularly harrowing journey, Krystyna and her companions were stopped by a German patrol. With no escape in sight, Krystyna calmly presented forged papers, claiming to be a journalist reporting on mountain life. Her charm and fluency in German disarmed the soldiers, and instead of arresting them, the patrol even helped push their vehicle out of a snowdrift. But these successes came at a heavy personal cost. On a secret trip back to Warsaw in early 1940, Krystyna tried to convince her mother to flee. Stefania, however, refused. She was determined to stay and continue teaching her French classes to the children of Warsaw. Krystyna's worst fears came true when in 1942, her mother was arrested by the Gestapo and sent to the Warsaw Ghetto. She was later executed. Despite this devastating loss, Krystyna pressed on. She knew that the information she was smuggling was critical to the Allied war effort. One of her greatest coups was securing intelligence about Operation Barbarossa, Third Reich expansion of the Soviet Union. She obtained film evidence of German troop movements and plans, which she managed to get out of Poland and into British hands. This intelligence report delayed Hitler's invasion and significantly altered the course of the war. Krystyna's daring exploits did not go unnoticed. By 1941, she was one of the most wanted operatives in occupied Europe. The Gestapo, aware of her activities, launched a manhunt to capture the mysterious woman who was slipping through their grasp. In early 1941, their chance came. Krystyna and Andrzej Kowerski, a fellow agent and her lover, were arrested in Budapest. Interrogated for hours, Krystyna knew that any slip could lead to torture or demise. But instead of breaking under pressure, she staged a dramatic deception. Biting her tongue until blood filled her mouth, she feigned a violent coughing fit, making it appear as though she had tuberculosis. Convinced that she was a health risk, the Gestapo not only released her, but also her companion, believing him to be infected as well. Once free, Krystyna and Kowerski resumed their work. But the Gestapo was closing in. With Hungary now leaning heavily towards the Axis, Krystyna knew they had to escape. After a series of narrow misses and high-speed chases, they fled through Yugoslavia, eventually making their way to Cairo, where they were received as heroes by the British SOE, Special Operations Executive. Krystyna Skarbek's mission was to assist in coordinating the resistance ahead of the impending Allied invasion. By mid-1944, the Gestapo's surveillance in the region was brutal. Clandestine networks were being uprooted daily, and traitors lurked in every corner, making it dangerous even for the most seasoned agents. However, Krystyna, now known widely as Christine Granville, thrived under such conditions. Her daring and quick thinking made her an invaluable asset to the French resistance. Operating alongside SOE agent Francis Kamertz, Krystyna took on multiple roles. She was a courier, a strategist, a saboteur, and sometimes even a distraction. Her ability to blend in and maneuver through dangerous situations made her the go-to agent for the most challenging missions. One such task involved disabling a German communications tower in the Vercors Mountains. With her trademark audacity, Krystyna led a small team of resistance fighters up the mountainside. They scaled sheer rock faces under the cover of darkness, cutting through German patrols to reach their target. At the base of the tower, Krystyna moved like a shadow. She set the explosives, timed them perfectly, and just as dawn began to break, the group slipped away. Moments later, the tower erupted in a fiery explosion, severing a critical line of communication for the German forces. This sabotage not only disrupted the German command structure in the region, but also bought valuable time for Allied forces preparing to land in southern France. But Krystyna's most famous exploit in France came just days before the liberation of the region. As the Allied armies closed in, the Germans became increasingly desperate to eliminate the resistance. When Francis Kamertz and two of his top operatives were captured and sentenced to execution, it seemed like there was no hope. But Krystyna, undeterred by the risks, launched one of the most audacious rescue missions of the war. Would you risk your life to walk straight into the enemy's lair, armed with nothing but your wits? This is exactly what Krystyna did. Dressed as a local peasant woman, Krystyna brazenly walked into the Gestapo headquarters in Digne-les-Bains. The guards were suspicious, but she feigned a naive ignorance that disarmed them. Inside, she demanded to speak to the officer in charge, claiming she had important information that would change the course of the war. Her confidence and assertiveness were enough to secure her a meeting. When she finally stood face to face with the Gestapo commander, Krystyna did not falter. She laid out her bluff. She was a British agent, and unless the prisoners were released, the Allies would know his identity and hunt him down. Then, she offered him the 2 million francs as a bribe. It was a risky move, one that required nerves of steel. The commander hesitated, his eyes searching Krystyna's face for any sign of deceit. But Krystyna held his gaze, projecting absolute confidence. Minutes ticked by, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Finally, the commander relented. Whether it was the bribe, the fear of retribution, or simply the force of Krystyna's personality, he agreed to release the prisoners. She walked out of the Gestapo headquarters with Francis Kamertz and his 2 comrades in tow, just hours before they were to be executed by firing squad. This daring rescue was the talk of the resistance, and for good reason. It was rare for any agent to confront the Gestapo directly and survive, let alone walk away with the release of high-value prisoners. The story of Krystyna's audacity spread quickly, cementing her status as a legend among both the French partisans and her colleagues in the SOE. After the liberation of France, Krystyna's work was far from over. She was transferred to Cairo, where the British were organizing their efforts against German forces in North Africa and the Middle East. Here, she found herself in a new theater of war, facing new enemies and operating under even more stringent conditions. Her role in Cairo was complex. As a senior operative, she was responsible for coordinating intelligence reports, training new agents, and managing the flow of information between Allied command and local resistance movements. It was grueling work, made even more challenging by the intense heat and the ever-present threat of betrayal. But for Krystyna, the hardest part was being away from the action. She yearned to be back in the field, risking her life for the cause she believed in. But Krystyna's reputation preceded her. The Italian fighters, who had heard of her exploits in France, welcomed her with open arms. She moved from one partisan camp to another, coordinating supply drops, gathering intelligence, and even leading sabotage missions herself. During one particularly intense skirmish, Krystyna found herself trapped behind enemy lines with a group of Italian partisans. With German patrols closing in, escape seemed impossible. But Krystyna refused to give up. In a daring nighttime maneuver, she and the partisans slipped past the German lines, using the dense forest to conceal their movements. By dawn, they were miles away from the enemy, safe and with crucial intelligence that would help the Allies plan their next offensive. Krystyna's actions in Italy earned her the admiration of both the Italian partisans and the British command. She had once again proven that there was no challenge too great, no danger too daunting for Christine Granville. When the war finally ended in 1945, Krystyna Skarbek was celebrated as a hero. She had served in 3 theaters of war, Poland, France, and Italy, had outwitted the Gestapo multiple times, and had saved countless lives. But as Europe celebrated peace, Krystyna faced a new battle, the fight for her own place in a world that no longer needed wartime heroes. Despite her incredible service, Krystyna was not offered British citizenship. The country she had risked her life for turned its back on her, offering only a small pension that was barely enough to live on. For a time, she found work as a stewardess on ocean liners, traveling between Europe and South America. But the excitement of her wartime adventures was gone, replaced by a numbing routine that made her feel like a shadow of her former self. Her relationship with Andrzej Kowerski, who had been her constant companion during the war, also began to deteriorate. The strains of peacetime life were too much for them. Eventually, they parted ways, leaving Krystyna alone and adrift. It was a bitter irony. She had survived the war, but peace seemed to be slowly destroying her. In 1952, Krystyna found herself in London, struggling to make ends meet. She took on menial jobs, her once vibrant spirit dimmed by years of rejection and hardship. It was during this difficult period that she met Dennis Muldowney, a man who would become her tragic undoing. Muldowney, a former merchant seaman, became infatuated with Krystyna. But what began as admiration quickly turned into obsession. He followed her, harassed her, and grew increasingly unstable. Krystyna, who had faced down the Gestapo, found herself at the mercy of a man who was unrelenting in his pursuit of her. On June 15, 1952, Muldowney confronted Krystyna at the Shelbourne Hotel in London. Fueled by jealousy and rage, he stabbed her repeatedly in a fit of madness. By the time the police arrived, Krystyna Skarbek, Christine Granville, the fearless spy who had defied the Germans, lay dead. Her killer was apprehended and later hanged for his crime, but the loss was incalculable. Her passing was a senseless tragedy, a stark contrast to the bravery and purpose that had defined her life. She had faced the horrors of war, outwitted the most ruthless security apparatus in Europe, and survived against all odds, only to be taken by the hand of a spurned lover. Krystyna Skarbek's life and achievements were not celebrated to the extent they deserved immediately after the war. For years, her story was overshadowed by those of other SOE agents, such as Violette Sabo and Nancy Wake. However, the tide has slowly turned. Today, historians and authors have made efforts to shine a light on her courage, her unparalleled contributions, and the indelible mark she left on World War II history. One of the reasons her legacy was initially overlooked was the complexity of her story. Krystyna's life did not fit into the neat narratives often preferred by historians and the public. She was a fiercely independent woman who defied conventional gender roles, often making decisions that bewildered even her allies. Her identity as a woman of mixed Polish-Jewish heritage, her tangled love life, and her refusal to conform to expectations meant that she did not fit the typical mold of a wartime heroine. But perhaps it was this very complexity that made Krystyna such a powerful agent. Her ability to weave between different identities, to mask her true intentions, and to manipulate her appearance and demeanor made her a master of espionage. She could be the demure peasant woman one moment, the fierce resistance fighter the next, and then transform again into a sophisticated diplomat, capable of outwitting even the most hardened Nazi officers. Krystyna was not just a spy. She was a pioneer who redefined the role of women in intelligence operations. During her time with the SOE, she demonstrated that women could be just as effective, if not more so, than their male counterparts in the dangerous world of espionage. Her missions required more than just bravery. They demanded a unique blend of charm, intelligence, and ruthlessness. One of the most intriguing aspects of Krystyna's story is how she used her gender to her advantage. At a time when women were often underestimated by male officers, Krystyna turned this bias into a weapon. She disarmed her enemies with her beauty and poise, then struck when they least expected it. During one of her missions, she faced a German officer who, suspicious of her presence, began to question her intensely. Krystyna responded by flirting with him, allowing his guard to drop. She then used the opportunity to steal key documents that would later prove invaluable to the resistance. It is no wonder that Winston Churchill's daughter, Sarah Oliver, noted that her father once called Krystyna his favorite spy. Her unique blend of audacity, elegance, and sheer courage made her an irreplaceable asset to the Allied cause. For those who knew her, Krystyna was more than just an agent. She was a friend, a confidant, and a source of hope during the darkest days of the war. Her colleagues often spoke of her with a mixture of admiration and awe. She had a magnetic personality that drew people in, and her ability to remain calm under pressure inspired those around her to push themselves beyond their limits. Her relationship with Andrzej Kowerski, the Polish officer and SOE agent who worked alongside her in Hungary, was one of mutual respect and affection. Despite the dangers they faced, the two shared moments of tenderness and camaraderie that sustained them through the war. Even when they were separated, Krystyna and Andrzej remained connected through their shared experiences and the knowledge that they were fighting for the same cause. Yet Krystyna was also a deeply private person. Despite the many lives she touched, she rarely spoke about herself or her past. This aura of mystery only added to her legend, making her seem almost otherworldly to those who met her. Even after the war, when asked about her exploits, she would downplay her role, shifting the focus to others or dismissing her actions as just part of the job. But for those who understood the full scope of her contributions, her humility only made her heroism more profound. Today, Krystyna Skarbek is recognized as one of the most significant female operatives of World War II. Her story has been featured in several books, documentaries, and even theater productions. Perhaps the most notable of these is Claire Mully's biography, The Spy Who Loved, which delves deeply into Krystyna's life and legacy, offering a nuanced portrait of a woman who lived by her own rules and refused to be defined by anyone else's expectations. Moreover, Krystyna's influence extends beyond the realm of espionage. She has become a symbol of resistance and resilience for women around the world. Her life serves as a powerful reminder that courage is not the absence of fear, but the determination to act in spite of it. She showed that women could be warriors, strategists, and leaders in times of conflict, a legacy that continues to inspire new generations. In recent years, efforts have been made to ensure that Krystyna's contributions are not forgotten. Memorials have been erected in her honor, and her name has been inscribed alongside other wartime heroes at the Special Forces Club in London. There is even a bronze bust of her at Ognisko Polskie, the Polish Hearth Club in South Kensington, London, commemorating her remarkable life and achievements. But perhaps the greatest tribute to Krystyna Skarbek is the growing recognition of her role as one of the founding figures in the modern history of espionage. As more researchers delve into her story, it becomes clear that Krystyna was not just a participant in history, she was a shaper of it. The story of Krystyna Skarbek is not just the story of one woman. It is the story of resilience in the face of tyranny, the story of defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. Her legacy is a testament to the power of the human spirit to endure and triumph, even when the world seems darkest. Today, as we look back on her life, we see not just a spy, but a pioneer, a trailblazer, and a hero. Krystyna Skarbek's courage, intelligence, and indomitable will serve as an inspiration not just for women, but for all who value freedom and justice. Her story reminds us that even in the most desperate circumstances, one person can make a difference. Krystyna's tale also serves as a powerful counterpoint to the notion that war heroes must fit a certain mold. She was unconventional, unpredictable, and unapologetically herself. Her strength lay not in conforming to expectations, but in shattering them. Whether smuggling intelligence across enemy lines, orchestrating daring rescues, or staring down the Gestapo, Krystyna Skarbek never wavered in her commitment to fighting for what she believed was right. And that, perhaps, is her greatest legacy. She showed the world that true heroism is not about being fearless. It is about being brave enough to face fear and act anyway. She was a beacon of hope in a world filled with darkness, and even decades after her passing, her light continues to shine. As we remember Krystyna Skarbek, Christine Granville, we honor not just the woman she was, but the ideals she stood for. She may be gone, but her spirit endures, a timeless reminder that heroes are not born. They are made through their choices, their actions, and their unwavering resolve.